Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Chez Maurice, the cafe, which is behind me. This is a presentation by Maurice on marketing, and today I'm talking about the relationship between knowledge and power. I'm going to go pretty much straight to a PowerPoint presentation, and the thing about it is that this is one of the most crowded ones you'll ever see, and you don't have to read it all. I'm not going to go through it all, but it's there for future reference. But it also has links to the definitive versions of what I'm showing you, so that this will be a knowledge resource all in its own right, which rather makes the point that I'm trying to make in the first place. So let's go to the presentation. Will, can you wave if you can see this? Okay, good, we're up. So Chez Maurice, knowledge bases, past and present, why and how. And by the way, here's a link to the whole slide deck as and when you're ready. So knowledge is power and we'll come on to where it comes from, but it's very old. But in general, the idea, people get the idea, and I think they're right, that power comes from having and exploiting knowledge and the way you use it. I mean, I suppose blackmail is the simplest answer, but sages, gurus, they leverage their knowledge. Almost everybody does. And it seems that human nature for most people includes the drive to possess and wield power. Well, if that's the case, then in order to do that better, there is an argument for saying that you need knowledge. But once you've got this knowledge, and historically particularly, how do you record it? How do you keep it? How do you pass it on? How do you sort it? And more importantly, how is it valued and prioritized? And finally, I guess the question is, so yeah, but what does that mean for us today? But let's face it, knowledge is power. This list is actually pages long, but again, if you want the whole list, which is about 25 items, along with what each of them thought and why they thought and so on, here's the link to the document, so that's easy. But it goes back to about Ptahhotep in the 25th century BC, and he realized that knowledge, wisdom were vital for conduct in a successful lifetime. Confucius, of course, who else? But more recently, Francis Bacon is actually credited with it, although what he said wasn't exactly knowledge is power, but he certainly wrote a lot about it, both in English and Latin. Thomas Hobbes, a little bit later, about maybe a century later, discussed the goals of knowledge and power, suggesting that he was a humanist, but he was suggested that the more you know, the more you can effectively contribute and be useful. Marx and Engels, of course, took a much harder line view of the whole thing, and they basically said, well, if you want power, you just have to control information and hence knowledge. So over probably 2 millennia, actually nearer 7, all of these cultures have had this notion that knowledge and power are connected. And just to be really cool, the Sanskrit says there is no comparison between a king and a scholar, as the king is celebrated only in his country, whereas a scholar is celebrated everywhere. And if we talk about Seth Godin and people like this, that's obviously still true to this day. And again, here's an article with all the different people. So what about knowledge? How was it, how was it recorded? How do we know it existed? How did it happen? Well, as best I can tell, somewhere between 50 and 80,000 years ago, there were certainly oral traditions. People passed things down. Later on, there were minstrels who sang songs. People told stories. In the Aboriginal cultures, there are all the stories of the dream time, and these pass on knowledge. these pass on information. They pass on useful things like where to get water and how to kill a buffalo and so on. And often when the sun's going to rise, when it's good to plant crops, a lot of this was oral and still is to this day. But that we have evidence that there are paintings and carving on rocks and caves and possibly trees. Certainly there are some early bits of wood with carving, so it looks likely. By about, I don't know, let's call it 5000 BC, there were early limited character sets. So people started to write stuff down, but in a very limited way. But there are cultures where they communicate via by rows of strings with different knots and arrangements and things. Clearly, the arrangement of rocks and posts in the environment, Stonehenge. Stonehenge is actually a record of knowledge, although we're not quite sure what, but it clearly embodied knowledge of various sorts. And we know for certain that it gave you where and when the sun was going to rise and fall and when the seasons moved and so on. And I think this is the beginning of monumental buildings, because there are lots and lots of buildings that have purposes connected with passing knowledge on, whether that be spiritual, whether it be philosophical, whether it just be useful or whatever. By about 5000 BC, there were much bigger character sets, and they were appearing on movable and storable stuff like clay tablets, parchment, bits of wood, and so on. And this led to the beginning of libraries. Now, libraries are what we now are beginning to call knowledge bases, but libraries is critical. Later on, writing on papyrus skins, all of a sudden it's portable, it's storable, but it's all done by hand, but the libraries got bigger. By about 200 AD, China had come up with woodblock printing. Now you could print you print by hand, but in reasonable numbers. So now you can have multiple copies of something in multiple places and multiple libraries. You can exchange it with other cultures. And so now you can spread and disseminate your knowledge and store it for yourself for later and pass it on to whoever follows you. By 900, China, as usual, had taken off. Interestingly, movable metal type came up in Korea in the 1300s. So Gutenberg wasn't all that ahead of the game. About 150, so 150 years later, Gutenberg worked out. So up till then, it was all by hand. Gutenberg worked out how to mechanize the thing, how to have a machine do it for you, and it took off. And instead of taking 2 days to print a Bible with 15 people, you print the press and it takes about an hour and a half. So we're at 1436. The first electronic memory was 47, the year I was born. And that was basically a thing like the CRT tube on TVs, but it actually had 2 states, so it could store data. Oddly enough, I worked with one of those when I very, very first started. Magnetic core memory, which had little magnets with wires through them, that came in 53, disks in 59, and the first DRAM, what you know as memory, solid state, wasn't till 76. And the last 4, so it's way more recent. So CD-ROMs 82, the TCP/IP protocol, and that's the code that allows the internet to happen. That's the language the internet uses. That wasn't developed until 83. Janet, which was a university network, used it in 84, but it really wasn't until about 95 that it was used all over the world with what is now the internet. So A, storing knowledge ain't new, and B, the way we do it now is way newer than you think, or at least than most people think. So libraries, I'm a huge fan of libraries, by the way, and in a way, these are 2 of my favorites, and they share a theme. What ought to be one of the most famous libraries, I suppose, was the Dead Sea Scrolls. This was written by a religious group about the time of Christ, but slightly before and slightly after Christ. And they recorded, if you like, their version of the scriptures, but hundreds of books, sort of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the writings of Enoch, and all sorts of things. and they meticulously wrote it all out on scrolls, stored it in jars, and because they were scared stiff of, among other people, the Romans stealing it, they hid it away in a series of caves that weren't discovered until about 50 years ago in the desert. But this, believe it or not, is a library. It was hidden, but as usual, but this is the point at which I say beware the Romans. Now, the one I was talking to Will earlier, and if people say to me, well, what's the one thing in history you would reverse? You're looking at it. The library at Alexandria was set up by one of the pharaohs, Pahotep, I think, I don't remember, but somewhere between 285, 246 BC, he set up the library at Alexandria and commanded that all knowledge from the whole of the known world, Arabic, Greek, Roman, you name it, he wanted a copy of that knowledge and put it in the library in Alexandria. By the time of the Romans, it had roughly 50,000 scrolls, which in modern terms would be about 100,000 books, and was a center of study and knowledge and a university for the then known world and then some. And then the Romans one day in a bad mood turned up and burned the lot. And for me, that was one of the biggest tragedies going, but there you go. So moving on, so knowledge bases, well, let's call them libraries. And again, at the bottom, there's a link which has the whole list, and it's enormous, and it explains what each of the different libraries had and why it was there and what it did. But we'd be here for hours if I did that. And I'm as I said, this is way too dense for PowerPoint. So the idea is I dip your toe in it. I show you where you can go for the detail if you want. But we certainly go back to Ashurbanipal in the 17th century BC. And that was a very significant library. Alexandria, we've talked about, assorted antiquities. By the time we get to the Middle Ages, there are huge monastic libraries. There's still a fabulous one, by the way, in Salisbury Cathedral, halfway up the tower. Then the big Renaissance libraries came in, Venice, Rome. I mean, the Vatican Library, for example, is a knowledge base and a half. It's just they don't let anybody see it. And then in later years, we got to classification. So Library of Congress, Dewey Decimal. Later on, I'll talk about ISBN, because ISBN is a knowledge base, just the same as everything else. And ISBN, if you actually go into the Nielsen database that drives it, has a synopsis and all the details and the titles and authors and everything for every book in about the last 100 and something years. It's an enormous source of data. And you just look it up by, ironically, you scan a barcode, or these days a QR code. And as you will know from me, that's Multics country and then some. Wikipedia, and don't trust everything in Wikipedia, but it is a knowledge base, but it's not very pure. But that was only launched in 2001. And again, this is a much more comprehensive list of the knowledge bases and what was in them and why they are and where they are. So hopefully you're still with me so far and haven't died of boredom. So let's come to, so what's not called a knowledge base, but is, or might be? Well, those of you old enough to remember intranets, an intranet is a website that's only available to those people inside an organization. So if you like, it's an internal website or a set of websites, and I've owned a couple of those. Websites themselves can be, I mean, if it's a one-page brochure site, well, of course not. If it's a 200-page catalog with a complete art gallery or all the text you've ever produced, then clearly it is. And then we come on to the big PWAs. Now, we at Multics, we talk a lot about the transition from a website to a progressive web app. Now, a PWA is neither an app nor a website, but on a phone, it behaves like an app. on a desktop or a mainframe or a tablet, it behaves like a website, and yet it's not quite either, but it's very flexible. You don't have different versions for different platforms. It simply exists, and it adjusts the way it interacts with whatever it needs to interact with. So it's very clever, it's very clean, and because it's modular, normally to use them, you don't have to learn much. You just have to learn what the building blocks are and what to put where, and I'll come on to what to put where later on. But if you want to see, and by the way, at Multics, we think that effectively the website is dying and it's going to be taken over by PWAs. But rather than take my word for it, reference this article, which will show you 50 very big organizations that have already moved over. Digital media management systems. So this is where all your IP, all your logos, all your commercial stuff, a lot of big companies now have those. They are certainly knowledge bases. Academic databases, of course, PubMed, Medscape, there's dozens of them. King's College have a fabulous one, by the way. The Nielsen ISBN classification, that, as I said, is a huge knowledge base. And just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, this is my book. I happen to have it to hand. And this on the back, you will notice, is the barcode that takes you directly to everything about this particular piece of IP. Photo libraries, online art galleries. So what's definitely not called a knowledge base, but really is, Amazon. On Amazon, you've got more than 40,000 descriptions of things. You've got their technical specification, you've got their pictures, their performance, the adverts, you've got a shop and everything else. There is an enormous amount of knowledge stored, even if you never bought anything. And the same is true for Alibaba. Pinterest is the same, but images, and Pinterest is classified. So you can search by, the image behind me for Chez Maurice is a French cafe, but I found that image under French cafes on Pinterest. So it is very much a knowledge base. Temu is like Amazon, but cheaper. The DVLA is an enormous knowledge base. Whether they should have that data is another question, but it's a knowledge base. NHS England is the same, so's .gov.uk, but so are Spotify, Netflix, and Shazam. So you need to understand that knowledge bases are about knowledge. And I think you would agree that most of these exercise very considerable power by virtue of owning this, which is my point. So, quick slurp. But that's all well and good. So we've got this data, enormous. But how do we retrieve it? How do we store it? How do we access it? But only the stuff that's interesting. Right. And by the way, interesting right here, right now. So of course you have to search. Now, searching is a skill in its own right, and it's very much hostage to how and why you search. And I'm talking in this section, I'm talking about both ways. I'm talking about what we do when we're using databases, and also what we need to do with our databases to make it available to those we want to see it. Now, some we want to see stuff for free. Some we want to see stuff if they register with us so that we can track it and we know who they are. Some we want them to pay for that access because our IP is, after all said and done, valuable. And so when you're searching, is stuff paid for? Is it behind firewalls? Can you get it? And if it's yours, are those things in place, and do they help or hinder what you really intend to happen? And in a sense, I don't mind as long as what you do is deliberate. So when you're searching scope, how wide do you make your search terms, or how tight? What's in, what's out? With another hat on, I could take you through how to do that. But bear in mind, if you say, I want all greengrocers in the UK, it's going to be an enormous list. If I say, I want a greengrocer on the corner of Knowles Street and Leyland Road, there's only two answers. And the only thing that changes is my search term. And quality, this is the biggie. How good, clean, and accurate is the source you're looking at? Now, Wikipedia can be, and data in Wikipedia can be entered by almost anybody. It can be challenged by anybody. But what that means is that people with political, social, and philosophical agendas post stuff all the time, and they also spike stuff they don't agree with. So you have to be very critical about what you're looking at and how good it is. Truth. Is what you're looking at truthful or designed to deceive? And is it opinion presented as fact? Is it fact? Is it verifiable? Is there evidence? Veracity. Are you seeing what you think you're seeing? Or are you seeing what someone else wants you to see? And these are the questions that should always be in the back of your mind when you're searching, because it's very easy to go click, 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 that's the answer. But I would always say, step back and say, okay, run these tests past it. And if you're not sure, is the data or knowledge backed by any tangible, verified third-party evidence? In theory, at least, the one thing I do like about the Quran is that if I wanted to know if something was real, there are apparently somewhere 6 copies as originally written down in the 6th century. So I could, in theory, with an Arabic scholar, go and look at it and see what was actually put in there in the first place, not what people 500 years later have put down because it suits their agendas. That's very rare. You can't do that with the Bible. The Bible was decided 300 years after event by a bunch of Romans in a place called Nicene in about 330 something, and for the next 200 years. They were still arguing. So that's not terribly accurate when they then, several hundred years later, dug up the Dead Sea Scrolls and discovered that it was, frankly, it was a bit of a Roman snow job. The Romans have a lot to answer in my world. So propaganda, we know, well, hopefully we know about propaganda. So is there an agenda behind what's being presented? Is there an agenda about what's being written? And whose agenda and who does it serve? Bias, be careful that the data you're choosing or your searches aren't there just to agree with your preconceptions or ideas or whatever. You need to try and make it independent of those, particularly if you disagree with it. But you, again, have to have checking mechanisms to make sure it's all okay. Payment. Well, if knowledge is power, then there's probably going to be an exchange or a payment. And it's often worth asking, when you see something that you think is free, it's often worth asking, well, yeah, but what am I paying for this? It might be money or a subscription. It might be your personal data. It might be your support for a cause. It might be your good name and lending your good name and reputation. But 9 times out of 10, you will pay for knowledge one way or another, if only in hard graft in getting it in the first place. And once you've got that hard-won knowledge, then you have to think about what's in it for you when you give it away or exchange it. So, of course, the next thing that says is, yes, but I have AI to help me. Yeah, wow, great. That just means that you go, if it's going to go wrong, it does so bigger, faster, better. Because with AI, if you don't specify exactly what you want, then things go pear-shaped way better. So what I would say is learn how to use it, learn how to do accurate searches, learn about logic, learn about Boolean searches, learn about decision trees, and then go use AI, and it'll really, really rev your game up. But like everything else, if I give you a Ferrari and you don't know how to drive, it's dangerous. If you're a really good driver, it makes you 10 times better. So rant over. So what do? Well, of course, we organize it because data and knowledge is only actually any good when it's organized. And by the way, the definition of data within the Data Protection Act is anything which is within an organized system. If you had a big box with all with with everybody's names and addresses in it, and it was shuffled and on bits of paper, then it wouldn't technically be data. The moment it goes into a filing system, it is. So it's about organization. Obviously, you know about the File Explorer wallet. Basically, that is just it's hierarchical, and you can search on a number of things like type, time, date, size, and so on. But basically, it's exactly the same as a library. It's exactly the same as any other hierarchical system. It's just electronic and therefore quicker. We, of course, at Multics have quite an extensive knowledge base, and this is actually activated through our chat service. So I'm going to take a quick look at this, if I can. There we are. So if you come into the Multics knowledge base, and this is it here, and it is available. Here, by the way, is the chat service I'm talking about. So with ours, you find this on any of our sites, and by the way, any of our client sites, because they all have their own version of this geared up for their business, and those in the room will nod happily and tell you that. But one of the many places it leads to is this one. So here we have the huge category headings. This is William's. This is mine. This is about data management. These are a series of video shorts explaining what we do. These are our surveys. This is for our team on how to onboard products. And we have huge amounts of training for our VA team inside this knowledge base. Now, outsiders won't be able to see it because we don't want them to right now. The PR stuff, you can see. These are samples of business cards. And there's articles within all of these. And within here is also this presentation on the link I showed you right at the top of the slides. Just very quickly. So this is within the marketing and sales area. So this is kind of mine. And these are selling without selling. These are the backdrops for a previous presentation. Why people buy a whole new world. Again, all these things. And I can either send you.
Maurice,
yeah.
Are you sharing something off screen or?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not sharing it.
No. Sorry. Thank you, Francois.
Sorry, share screen. Let's go to. But I wasn't aware that it had shifted. Where's it gone? There. Okay. Thanks, Francois. Good man. Right. So let's go back. So these are all the headings I was talking about earlier. This is the system. This is the chat box. If I go here into marketing and sales, again, here are all the different articles with videos and cartoons and so on. So this is our knowledge base. But as I said earlier, that everybody, this one is for Multics itself, but every one of our clients has one of these and a knowledge base like this, except that it has their content in it, and it can be organized differently, although structurally they're sort of the same. But one of the show and tell issues about the presentation you're watching right now is that those links I showed you take you here. This is where you end up. And once you're in there, by the way, if it's available, you're more than welcome. There's round about 550 items and counting. And it's going to be twice that very soon indeed. So that shows you the power of the knowledge base and the one we use. And let's go back to the presentation. So, and it's all done from this help link, which also takes you to the VAs for help. It takes you to the trouble tickets. It takes you to queries. And in fact, if you want to, it can take you straight to a board member, all through that link in the bottom left-hand corner. So to set this up, of course, and if you're our client, you do have to do some work, guys. So what we need is a clear and concise definition of structure and content. Now, we have, unlike most companies, the point of our VAs is that as a business person, you might not want the faff of doing that. So if you don't mind paying, and it's not expensive, our VAs will break the back of that for you, do most of it, guide you through the process, make sure it loads perfectly, make sure everything is where you want it, and if it isn't, they'll put it there for you. So I included an example which, and I'm sorry this is intense, but let me show you one example of how this can be. And I doubt if many will get more complex. This is Melville Marketing is transitioning as we speak from a 2004 website into a 2024 PWA. And this is the sitemap, structure, organization, and everything else for the new Melville Marketing site. The white ones are things that I want you guys just to be able to see, like legal stuff, like resources, like promo. The red stuff you will never see because that's internal management stuff. The grey is if you register, so you become part of Chez Maurice down here, or Maurice Tours, some of the tribes, if you want the case studies, knowledge base. I just require registration so I know who you are. This one is for the stuff you pay for, so mentoring, some of the paid diagrams that you pay that are my IP and stuff like that. And on here, I specify what they all are, what the relationship is, what categories they're in, where they sit, how they relate to each other. And I am going to give this to our internal team, to the VA team and the tech team, and they will simply put this into a PWA. Now, before we do that, I will have loaded my knowledge base with every one of these. So they will sit in the knowledge base anyway, so you can find them that way. But when it comes to the PWA, we can just link it. It's a very fast process. And by the way, for me, this also links to all my other businesses, because like many entrepreneurs, I have more than one string to my bow. And all of this is integrated into one PWA, driven, in my case, off that particular QR code, but that's irrelevant. So most of you will have one like this, but it's going to be maybe a quarter this size. If you want to use this as a template, because this does have all the legals and it does have all the policy and it does have all the things you're supposed to have, because I'm fully ICO registered and the lot, you're more than welcome, and I can work with you, or will work with you, but we'll develop yours, and it, as I say, it could be much simpler. But this deals with organization, data flow, hierarchy, structures, permissions, plans, links, and feeds. So this is a picture of everything, but I'm traditional. And here's a link to this particular, if you wanted it, here's a link to this particular sitemap. As I said to somebody earlier on another platform, I too don't mind sharing sometimes. But again, this is a link in the knowledge base to this diagram. When this diagram actually goes live, it will be covered in links. So they will link to other places in the knowledge base, because knowledge bases are layered one upon another. That's kind of how they are. So once we've built this thing, we've got the data in there, it's all sorted, the VAs have checked it, the techies have said it's okay, then Talk Chat, the chat service we were talking about, will mine the details for you to create bespoke answers, or any for your business, or indeed any inquirer, anytime 24/7, because we, like everybody else, have an AI helper. Ours is called Lares, who, by the way, was the son of Apollo and Rosmerta. So he's the son of prosperity and communications, is who Lares was. But Lares is our AI avatar. And he and his team, basically our VAs, because they know how to drive him really well, he will find you any answer, any flavor of any answer, any version of any answer. So he'll take the data that's there and put it out in the way that you want it, with the selections, with the voice and everything else. And from there, from this link, you can go human, you can go to Apollo AI, which is the the one that actually comes with the main system. You can talk to an avatar, you can get a ticket, a VA, whatever. And here's the cool bit. We have about 6 layers of service from a free one, which is a pretty good business card, up to something incredibly complex, which will run a corporation for you. And you just start with the QR code you have to begin with. It's yours for life. What goes on behind it changes, either just because the detail changes or because you decide to go up a couple of grades in service, and all of a sudden it leads to loads more places, and you've done very little about it apart from provide us with the data to feed into it. So you can integrate with your progressive web app, your customer relationship management system, your social media feeds and systems, your PR feed systems, and the whole 9 yards. So that's pretty much a lightning tour about enormous data, but what next? Well, if any of this is relevant, or you're sat in your seat going, well, I have to get my hands on this. All of the systems, even the free ones, have this chat and knowledge base available. But with the free ones, if you want VA assistance, you pay for it on an ad hoc basis, on time used. And by the way, we have designated book times for tasks. So we know that a particular task should take a given time at a given cost. So you know up front, within reasonable bounds, what it's going to cost you and how long it's going to take, because we believe in transparency. And as I say, with the really cheap ones, then the VA assist is costed. When you go above that, then you find it's built in, because we don't think you want the aggravation. So you start with Phone Lite, QR Link business cards, and then all the way up to Phone Lite Corporate with your CRM, your PWA, bells, whistles, gold-plated, mink-lined, actually at a surprisingly good price, and very low learning overheads compared with anything else you're going to do. Now, this bit is absolutely it. You can go on that journey or not. In easy steps, you go there when you're ready, and we'll hold your hand. Here's all the links you need to look at that from the different systems. And, one or other of us will talk you through it. But again, this is all on the presentation, and I'm hoping Will is getting these into the chat. But if not, get back to me, email me or whatever, and we'll send you the whole deck, and you'll have all the links and all the connections and everything else. And finally, take a deep breath and breathe, because this has been an event by Maurice Watts at the Chez Maurice Pop-Up Cafe, and we are the cafe networking arm of Melville Marketing Limited, and I've done this for Multics Limited. And since everything we do is driven by QR codes, the one in the top right corner is me as the marketing director of Multics. The one on the left-hand side is me as Melville Marketing. The bottom right-hand one is everything about Multics. So this is, if you like, our PWA, come website, come app, whatever. And that is the gateway to everything in Multics. So all you have to do is scan that, click on the link, and you can see everything we want to do, the shops, the descriptions, the knowledge base, the people, the whole 9 yards. And on that note, I'll stop sharing, and if you've survived, I'll happily take questions. Please unmute by all means.
That was brilliant, Maurice. Absolutely fascinating. And it's the first time I've seen you present. So given that you're not feeling too well, I think you've done an amazing job. Thank you.
Yeah, this is me on a bad day.
Brilliant. I'm a member of the Thomas Hobbes Society. You mentioned Thomas Hobbes in one of your early slides.
Yeah.
And I used to live in Malmesbury, which was the original seat of education before Cambridge and Oxford came and took over the seats. And Thomas Hobbes Society is based in Malmesbury. It's absolutely fascinating. I've attended quite a few lectures and learned lots there.
I think he was quite a humanist in lots of ways.
Yes, yeah, fascinating character, and it's lovely that it's still continued to this day. And I've also visited the cathedral library you mentioned, halfway up Salisbury Cathedral.
So have
Amazing.
I. I mean,
Mm.
you know, like, wow. I mean, I love libraries, by the way. I'm a complete, utter fan of real libraries. Um, but some of the ancient ones are just, you know, just stunning. I mean, but I suppose I'm a data and you must have gathered by now that I'm an information geek. I absorb information like a sponge. Um, but I find it interesting, and I love sharing, and I love going into the corners and saying, well, okay, because back in the days when I ran a youth training scheme for IT, once a year I took people to the science, forced them to go to the science museum, so that they looked at the roots of what they were dealing with in IT, the early radio, the early computers, the Jacquard loom. Because unless, in my view, unless you understand your roots and the history and where it came from, it's much harder to understand the underlying structures and therefore know how to drive them well.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Good, now I can cough. So any more comments, questions?
I just want to say I love how you've gone back to the first library and the history of that. And sorry, I'm full of flu, so my apologies.
Who
I
isn't?
love how you've gone
Who
back to the
isn't?
beginning and taking us on a journey with you. It's really empowering. So thank you.
There are those, of course, who claim I knew those guys.
You probably did in another reality. Don't ever dismiss that.
By the
Not
way,
the other reality, more this reality, Maurice.
for those of you of a metaphysical bent, on the inner there is a place called the library, which contains all knowledge from the original past to the foreseeable future, all in one place, because it's timeless.
Do they have the ancient tablets there as well then?
It's a place on the inner that you go to, you know, you go in vision, and it has all the data of all time, past and present.
Ah, so you're talking about the Akashic records.
Well, it's all the data that ever was and ever will be, all in one place. And it's fascinating because a friend went there about 40 years ago, and they showed him a load of circular mirrors and said, this is information. And he was kind of, what? How does a mirror have information? 30 years later, they invented the CD, and he took one look and went pale and went, oh my God. So, but again, if you're not into metaphysics, then it's all too woo-woo for comfort. But you know, for those of you into that stuff, yeah, I can do a bus trip there sometime. We could do an away day.
Love that. I'm definitely up for that.
So, Francois, what do you think? Too much data? It's a lot. That's why I say downloading the deck and following the links and everything else. If this is of interest, then it is all there, but you can't, you know, I'm not going to talk through every slide. I mean, that's insane.
Maurice, how important do you think this is for like mom and pop, very small businesses? And we talk a lot about, you know,
it's actually vital.
right.
I'm still recording. I guess that makes sense. Yeah. The thing is this. This is a general point about business and about the tools I teach and various other things. If you're a big business and you make a mistake in SWOT or cash flow or whatever, and it's I don't know, it's £100,000 error, you get told off and nobody cares and the accountants hate you. If you're a mom and pop business, you're in a tent on the breadline. So who should have the best systems? Who should be the most organized? Who should have the best quality data? So whatever you have, and a lot of the things you have an idea, or you do a design, or you write a piece or whatever, and it's on a piece of paper and it gets lost. 20 years later, you might have used that for content or you might have created a patent, or you might have done all sorts of things with it, or somebody else comes up with it, and you can no longer prove that it was actually yours. If that is stored safely in a knowledge-based system somewhere, and by the way, it'll be time-stamped when you entered it, then, and your search system is good, then you can retrieve it, use it, recycle it, modify it, change it. I have a thing about how to survive in a recession, and it's for small businesses, and it talks about credit control and marketing and all sorts of things. And I've updated that 4 times in different recessions. But oddly enough, most of it is still valid today, and will be when they tell me we've got a recession next week. So I think it's vital. And with the Talk To knowledge base, we're offering them one of the easiest ones to use on the planet for nothing.
As a new member of the Multics family, I can't speak highly enough of it. Absolutely delighted with my mum and pop corporate end, because I've just gone up and up and up. Started basic only literally a few weeks ago. It's been a remarkable journey, and I'm loving it.
Elaine, knowing you, your mum and pop, yeah?
Yes.
So how many items have you already uploaded into your knowledge base, and how many more are you going to put in there? I've got a figure in my head.
Okay, I don't know actually, but Mr. Multics there, William, will be able to give you the numbers. Let's say I ran out of my free AI quota within a very short time.
If I said 800 plus, I wouldn't be far wrong.
Okay, well, really, goodness me,
Yeah.
I had no idea that I'd done that much, but yeah, it's been great, and it's at the tiny bit of what I'm going to be doing.
And if that's mom and pop. And by the way, I'm looking at Sarah here with her flu. I'm pretty sure that if I looked at the designs, the playlists, the commentaries and everything else, she's already got several hundred that could be loaded.
Yeah.
And we haven't even started.
No.
So and the thing is that the people around the table, Sonia's very big in utility warehouse, among 4 other businesses. Now, in network marketing, there are lots and lots of things that you just have as data and knowledge that you churn out, you use to replicate, you use to recruit, you use to train, and so on and so forth. And UW themselves do have an extensive database, but if you have your set sorted in the way you need it, in the way you're going to use it at your fingertips, along with all the other 5 businesses you run, for me that's a no-brainer. But I would say that, wouldn't I?
Thank you for that genius idea. I've got something new that has come across my path, and it's absolutely fascinating. Will's holding his head. It's a doctor at home. You can be your own doctor at home with this stuff. Oh my God, I've got a new section I'm going to start writing this afternoon.
So let me talk about knowledge bases, yeah? What if we downloaded the whole of Hippocrates and then Culpeper's?
Wow.
Indexable. Search for flu. Well, Hippolytus said this, Hippocrates said that, Culpeper says do this, John Deere said do that, and here's what you go and pick, and this is what it looks like.
I'll be talking to you this afternoon, Will. Look out.
Ah.
By the way, ideas like this is what I do for a living.
Maurice, can you, as I got this terrible building noise in the background, can you explain how, and perhaps Elaine, how important it is to connect the knowledge base to your phone light or phone site or website or app? That's just our terminology.
Actually, it's really cool because I did it, and because I haven't got you yet to do my you have to register first, I actually had a potential client email me. Well, they did turn into clients, but whatever. This was before, and I said, just go on here and have a look at like a couple of case studies. And she emailed me back within half an hour saying, I'm trying. And she signed on straight away. So that's how important it is.
I've never said a word, never prompted her. Perfect. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome. But my question, I have one question, and this is going to really hurt you, Maurice.
That's all right.
I mean, like, you know, it's really easy to go onto the knowledge base and write hundreds of articles. But how much, from a marketing point of view, how many is an optimum number to actually have? And how much turns people off?
Right. You can have as many as you want. The difference, I'm not going to play games. The difference between information and spam is purely relevance. Fundamentally, they are exactly the same data. The question is relevance. So, for your target audience, for your avatar, for your ideal customer, if they are somebody who's, if I talk in psychometric terms, if there's somebody who is a high dominant, you know, leading thrusting manager, they like everything in bullet points. So 6 bullet points is great, 8 bullet points is fine, 9 bullet points is too many. If they're an ideas person, 2 pages is fine. So so what you send them and how often you send them and how you send them depends on them, what they need, what they want, what they like. Yeah. What you have in your arsenal just means you have a choice. But what you do have to do is to be able to select the relevant one. Now I am trying to insist that when we build our databases, there is a section in it that I call Who is Bob? You would call it bio. So when you fill in your database with name, address, business title, yada, 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 I want the bio section filled in as well, because then I can search on those fields looking for holistic health, mind, shark, banker, whatever. And then I send them what's relevant for them, because when I go to AI and say, pull out the articles on knowledge and power as perceived by bankers, and I send it to people who have banker in their bio, that's called targeting. So how you do, so you collect, in a sense, you collect as much as you can handle, or rather how much as you can index, because then you have choice. And then you select what you do with it, depending on your target audience. Does that make sense?
So how important is the index? Because inside talk, well, I assume most knowledge bases are the same. The actual, it's a bit like Google, isn't it? The actual words that you put into the initial, into the right at the top of your article, that's going to be very important.
Yes, it is. Yes, what it says on the tin is a very, very good idea. Hopefully, you'll notice nearly all of mine actually do exactly that, because that's for indexing purposes, not for promotional purposes.
And having a fairly robust and detailed categories then is probably quite important as well for people who are coming in and want to read something about you. So you're effectively being super organized, and it's just like going into a library where you can go to this section, that section. So it's not just like fiction, non-fiction. It's like breaking down by Dewey Decimal as well.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people's learning capabilities are different. Some people are very visual, some people are very audio, some people are very hands-on and need to explore, and some people need information in abundance so that they fully can get their head around it.
By the way, the physical one that's audio, visual, and kinesthetic. Kinesthetic are feelers, audio are hearers, and video are visualizers. So the way you present if you can work it out, an NLP will tell you that if you watch their eyes when you're talking to them, you can work out which one they prefer, and then you change your words to meet it. So if I've been watching you carefully and I can make a guess, and I can say, so do you see what I'm talking about, Charlotte?
Yeah.
Does Elaine hear what I'm saying? Does Will feel it? Do you get it?
I get the feel. I'll tell you what else I try and do in articles is put a pretty picture in there, a relevant pretty picture, and use your branding constantly to reinforce your brand on all your documents, and use the free service that Pixels, is it Pixels or Pexels provide? It's within our toolbox. And get some nice pictures, relevant pictures, and I suppose Rachel and I have spent more time than anybody looking at pictures, because from Rachel's point of view, the picture is critically important.
Yeah.
What I've started to do now is I'm still in experimental mode, but it seems to be taking shape now. So I've got a new LinkedIn newsletter. So I'm doing the LinkedIn newsletter in short form, and then I'm linking it to a article in my phone site.
Well, very shortly, we should be able to offer a facility where the way I envisage it is there's a section in your knowledge base which is called outgoing content, and you stack 20 articles in there, or you put an index in there of 20 articles, and then we have an engine that says on Thursday post number 1, on Saturday post number 2, on Monday after that post number 5, and so on. And you then schedule it, and so you sit down every month or whatever and decide what content you're going to put out in order and everything else. You stack it in the knowledge base and have an engine just pull it out and send it. And you can do that multiple times across multiple platforms, and you can decide what platforms make sense for each one and all that. And we're very, very close to be able to do that.
That is music to my ears. Perfect, because by the time you've got that in line, I'll be more advanced, and I'll
Might be a bit of an on cost, but it's not desperate.
Well, it was saved because I'm paying somebody else for that type of thing. I'd sooner keep it in the family.
Well, we now also have the ability, if something we agreed a couple of days ago, if it comes off, the other option is, and it's a slightly different charging system, but if it's a PR piece, then you can select the journalists it goes to, and they will target anything up to 1,000 journalists worldwide within quite a narrow banded topic, if 1,000 exist. And you can actually target themed journalists with themed content relevant to that. So it's pure automated PR.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Hurry up, Maurice, get your finger out.
That's it. Well, it's already in the goodie bag. We just haven't integrated it. You can do it already, but we're talking about inside your phone site. Click the blank button. That's
the guy that's I'm going to talk to Prima about it. But the guy that I'm going to put you in contact with, his Calendly is broken for some reason. He's aware of it, but as soon as it's fixed, I'll be sending in individual invites to you to talk to him. And you really do need to listen to his presentation. It takes an hour. He's a very, very patient, methodical man, and you'll enjoy it, I promise.
Got his Calendly. I emailed him yesterday.
Well, I've got some Calendly to do later on today, so I'll tell you if it's a Calendly fault or if it's just an individual. But in the meantime, I have one or two things including organising some primary care from my chocolate fireguard GP. But I've got that to do this afternoon. But yeah, Tanya, are you actually with us?
I am. I'm just listening in and just taking it all in.
So how was the whirlwind? You're new to this.
Yeah, it's I'm still just trying to figure it all out. But it'd be interesting to know how people have implemented this whole matrix thing. Like Charlotte, what is it you do, and how have you implemented this into your business? Don't mind me asking.
Sorry, I'm Sarah.
I'm sorry. It's just I'm
right.
I'm Charlotte.
Charlotte's the one with the hat.
Yeah.
okay. Hi, Charlotte.
I'm normally at work now. So what I've done is I've designed the clothing company that goes behind Multics. So when you're out in Tesco's and you've got one of our hoodies on, you become your digital self because you've got the QR code and your logo in the middle of your QR code that links you to all of you. So when you're out and about, nobody knows who you are. But if you're out and about and you have one of those magnetic energies, presence about you, people just look and wonder, and you'll just see them when you were walking around, just scanning you. And then you speak to William and he tells you like, okay, I have my hoodie on today. How did I do? And he gives you all your stats behind it, how many people have bought hoodies. It's literally William's built our app for us. He's put us over to a PWA that we can make changes instantly. We have daily meetings. He's been nothing but support, and we're literally launching now.
Okay, brilliant.
I've seen it. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Yes,
And
we've
you
got
wait.
car stickers. We've got so we've got a beach house, and there's a QR code on the gate of the beach house. So instead of people coming now onto the decking and putting their dirty fingers on the windows, they just scan the QR code and they can see inside out. So you think of that with gyms, especially if you've got a gym that's got, when you can go to a gym and it's flat, it's dead, there's no energy in there, and you just want to go in and you want to come out, and you feel like you need to go home and sage. But if you've got a really banging energy inside of a shop or a gym or a night, whatever, you can now bring that to light just by the power of the QR code and letting people just navigate to what they want to see. And that's what experience could I possibly have if I go here?
Tanya, do you know what I love about Sarah's?
Go on.
If they still have it, they even have recommended funky playlists inside their system. I mean, how good, how cool is that?
Nice.
Yeah, so when you think if Charlotte's driving down the road, she's got a QR code on the back of her car, and she's got a banging playlist, they can just zap the QR code and go straight to what she's listening to.
Oh, while she's driving?
Yeah.
We've got them on all the cars, so it's great.
And Gil Lambert, he's got his radio station on his phone, right? It's in production. I mean, how cool is that? He's got his own radio station on his own phone, right?
Could you put your link in the chat, or what's the name of your company? I can see what you guys are up to and doing.
It's Connectedly Woke.
Connectedly Woke.
Yeah.
I can put a link in.
Charlotte's going to put a link into the chat now.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. And Elaine, sorry, Master Health Mentor. You said you've just recently started, like 3 weeks ago or something. You were saying,
Christmas, pretty much just before Christmas. Yeah, so I'll find my link and pop it in the chat as well.
Elaine's been doing this for years. She joined us.
Oh, right.
She joined us recently, and by the way, both of you are in Elevate.
Oh, hello.
You can find Elaine through Elevate.
Okay.
Perfect.
And by the way,
Brilliant.
I would love Elevate to have been in on this presentation.
Yeah.
Now do you see why?
Thank you. And oh, where am I? Where's it gone?
The possibilities with everything that we're all doing here is endless. Thanks to Maurice and more so to William for for putting us in contact with all of you guys. You think we've taken a while to get off the ground, but because I go with I'm very spiritual, as you probably guessed. And I don't chase, I attract what's meant for my higher self will simply find me, and so it is. And it's to go with flow state, so don't force anything. And it's nice now just to see literally everything just falling into place, but nobody's rushing and nobody's, oh, this has got to be done. There's no, the only deadlines and limitations that we set are the ones that we set on ourselves. So it's slow and steady, get everything in the right place so that you have little hurdles when you get to that finish line.
Amazing. Brilliant. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Tanya. Nice to hear you.
I know. I actually came to my camera. Yeah, so you use UW, and I'm a partner of UW now. So if I was I'd be using this system for UW, what's your experience of it, Sonia? And how can I implement it?
Oh, I absolutely love it. I've got a QR code, and it's in a carcass that says scan and save. And what it does, it goes directly to my UW website.
Okay.
So that worked. So everywhere I go, I've always got my QR code on me. And when people ask me, about UW, I just say, scan this, and you can do yourself a quote straight away.
Brilliant. So they do the quote themselves?
They can go into the website and do a quote by themselves. They don't always need me to do it.
Oh,
I didn't know that. For example, if you want to go onto a price comparison website, you can just go straight in and you can do a quote, can't you? Yeah, so as a partner, I've got my own personalised website. You should have one as well. So if you want, catch up with me and I can show you where to find it.
Oh, brilliant.
And people can just go straight in and do their own personal quotes.
And the difference
so this system is so versatile. It's
and the difference is we stick it on a QR code. You slap that on the front page of your phone, slide it, like when we met, you slide it across the table and go, zap that.
Yeah. It works.
Or I think as well, from UW's perspective, the labels through the letterbox, the postcard idea, I've been talking to Charlotte and Sarah about this. So postcards are incredibly cheap. They're cheap to post. You can have QRs on there, you can have your biz card on there so that people can transfer your details onto their phone, and indeed your app. So I think your background's a problem. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
I've got my labels and I stick these onto leaflets and flyers, just sticking through people's letterboxes.
So that's got all your details on it, rather than you writing your number separately and your email, whatever, and then
it's all there.
Brilliant.
And it goes straight to my UW website.
Nice. Thank you, guys.
Tanya, if you want the simplest answer, it is, if you've got a website, it's a pain in the ass to do any alterations. If you've got a Multics PWA, it's pish easy and you can do it in 5 minutes.
Perfect.
That's ultimately what it comes down to, I think.
Is that like funnels? Does that include funnels? I don't need to do any funnel stuff or website stuff?
No, you can list up to get the CRM one, and that does all of them for you as well. And your registrations come straight in as well. So everything.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I also use it to promote events as well, because I've got an event QR.
Yeah,
so I'll use that as well.
Well, you've seen the event QR.
You just did it.
You just clicked on it like 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
Now, but there is an answer for everyone. You just tell us how far you want to go, how complex it wants to be, and it can be a business card, or it can be, oh my God, all the bells and whistles.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Tanya, I highly recommend it. So
at the moment, the most expensive thing we do, although it costs a bit to set up, is less than 100 quid a month to run. With online updating 24/7.
Nice.
You know, it's we're a cheap date. What can I say?
I'm an even cheaper date.
Oh, Sonia, never.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys.
So,
Oh, yeah.
have we had enough for one day?
My throat can't take anymore.
Mine's getting close, but I have a lovely lady downstairs brewing me green tea non-stop, so it's all good. Right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Maurice on Marketing, courtesy of Maurice. Thank you so much for rocking up. I trust it's been useful and interesting. And until the next one, yeah.
Love to you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Maurice. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Bye now.
Yes.